our Bleeding Edge Innovation and Grand Rounds. It really is a pleasure to have as our speaker today Colonel Dr. Dan Bruzzini. And I think that we've just been having some informal conversations here too in terms of just really the importance of being able to share experiences, life experiences with students, with others. And this is exactly what we were hoping for these Grand Round series, is to really highlight role models, people that have that experience that could share these with us, with our students, and really for us to learn from as well. So Dr. Bruzzini is a neonatologist, an adjunct professor, retired Air Force colonel, an alum of the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign here with a degree in biology, and in fact did some of your pre-med volunteer activities at Carle Hospital locally. Dr. Bruzzini earned his medical degree from UIUC, which is the Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences, and served as a flight surgeon for the Air Force in the Middle East, did his pediatric residency at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, and a neonatal-perinatal fellowship at WashU in St. Louis. Retired from the Air Force in 2015, but then that wasn't enough. Went on to finish his MBA, and now serves as a medical director for a major Fortune 100 company. So it really is a pleasure, and it sounds like a lot of interesting stories and experiences to hear from, and we very much look forward to this. So welcome, and happy to hear about the U.S. healthcare going back to go forward. I'll turn that over to you.
Thank you very much. I just have to say, the views expressed may or may not represent the views of the presenter, but they are certainly no one else's. And I have no financial relationships to disclose. And really, this talk is going to take a page out of antiquity and Socrates, who said, I cannot teach anybody anything. I can only make them think. And that, I hope, is what is the end result of this talk. The way we'll go about it is we'll talk about history. Because as we know, Illinois is a very big engineering school. And in geometry, how many points does it take to make a line? 2. So if all you have is the present, all you have is thrust and no vector, you don't know where you're going. But if you have the past and you understand how you got to the present, then you can figure out 2 points make a line, which way to go, which direction things are going. So we're going to look at US history, European history. There's some founding and philosophical differences. We'll get into some of the employer-based insurance and what is this role of government in healthcare industry. And then ask about some questions using the Socratic method to see if we can stimulate some thoughts and some ideas that may make things better over time in a reiterative process. Let's go back. Let's go back to Jamestown, Virginia in 1607. This was the first permanent English settlement, and there was founded as both a business venture as well as for freedom of religion, the Anglican religion in this case. And this founding effect, we see it in companies like Apple, which had Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs brought to Apple, or founded his company, on being easy to use and being pretty, from the font to the packaging to the ease of use with a mouse. These are things, the innovation, the new steps that, and making it pretty and easy to use. These are some of the founding effects Apple had, Steve Jobs had on Apple. It's also similar to the founding effects of this first colony. It was a business adventure, and it was also founded for freedom of religion. It was initially communal in Jamestown. They had the same religion, common goals, they had a common voyage, common adversity. They had no private property, and people worked the communal land to put in the communal pot to share for everybody in this ideal society that they had set out to create. Well, they starved. In fact, 3 years, they barely had enough people to make it to the next season. Captain John Smith, a good Anglican, knew that 2 Thessalonians 3:10 said, those who will not work should not eat. And so he got rid of this communal land, communal property thing, and said, we're going to have private property. Each are going to have their own tract of land, and they're going to do with it as they see fit. Sell it, work it, find something else to do. They're going to do something better with it. This is how individualism, private enterprise, religion, and a limited government was first established in the United States. Now you look at religion in Europe. It's kind of interesting that in Europe, how you save your soul is dependent upon the religion of the king. So if you're in England, you're an Anglican. If you are in Spain, France, Italy, you're Catholic, if the king is Catholic. And if you're in the northern German, Denmark, Norway, Sweden area, you're a Lutheran. Heck, Scotland, the Hadrian line that divided England from Scotland, you're a Calvinist in Scotland. Whoever the king was, that determined how your soul was going to be saved. That was not quite the same in the 13 colonies. Sure, there were Quakers in Pennsylvania, Catholics in Maryland, but if you look at the map, very mixed with the Lutherans, Presbyterians, Catholics. They were side by side. In fact, they often shared the same church. Couldn't build separate churches. They were a lot hard to do and very expensive. So they would just share the church. Very individualistic. You have your religion, I have mine. We work together business-wise, that's fine. But when it comes to how our soul is to be saved, you're going to have it from at 11 o'clock, we'll have it at 12 o'clock. We'll be as separate as we need to be because we are very individualistic. There are also differences between the US and Europe, boils along the approach to law. Continental Europe was influenced by Roman civil law, the Legge delle 12 Tavole, okay, the 12 tablets of Roman law. This was based on the Greek philosopher Solon's law, who noticed that democracy in Athens was quite a wild ride, especially in the Peloponnesian War between Sparta and Athens. The of democracy where Thucydides was both a hero of a general 1 year and it was swing back and forth depending on 1% of the Poland said there needs to be a fixed body of law, and the Romans said, hey, that's a pretty good idea. And so they came up with the 12 tablets of Roman law. And so to avoid the anarchy and the tyranny of the majority that happened in the democracy of the Greek states like Athens. So again, with civil law following these 12 tablets of Rome, it's predictable. There's less freedom and less flexibility, but it does give you some stability. You know what the rules are. And the contracts generally are a lot shorter because you already have the basis of law. That did not happen in England. While England was ruled for 400 years by Rome, it really imprinted very little on the Britons. The Anglo-Saxon fall of the Roman Empire in 476 AD, in 6 centuries. And they only had 2 laws, really, okay? One was private property, okay? This is not just your material property, but it extends to your intellectual property in your speech, your religious property, the things that make you, you, okay? That is yours, and no one can take it. Life. The king can't just kill you. Now, in the 5th, 6th century, that was pretty progressive if you think about it. You couldn't just go and kill somebody and take their stuff, okay? You had to respect their property. You had to respect their life. So when they had competing issues, they would have to work it out. For example, who has access to this water? Who has this access to land? Who is allowed to do what? How do you sell things? What's the trade? And so when they worked out these conflicts and they settled it, they didn't want to reinvent the wheel, like do it again. This created a common law, a common jurisprudence, a stare decisis, what had gone on before, what had already been decided before, so that they could progress gradually based on real world examples, real world conflict, real world problems. So they would get these laws in common to then progress forward. Very individualistic. Now let's look at the economic founding effects on the United States. Adam Smith in his Wealth of Nations, written in 1776, he's made the case that self-interest is both profitable and moral. He stated that it's not because the butcher, brewer, or the baker want to give you a good dinner, make sure it won't make you sick, make sure you're fine. It's their own self-interest, because if they give you a good piece of meat, if you're not sick, if it works, then you're going to buy more of it and make them better off, more profitable to sell. So in spite that man can misbehave at times and selfish and want to take advantage of somebody else, if you want to profit, just like Steve Jobs, being able to build a phone, hi, tell me what you want, what you really, really want, what you really, really want. You want a camera in there? What size do you want it? Do you want to be able to put 1,000 apps on it? Sure, I'm more than happy to cater to you. And that's what Adam Smith realized way back in 1776. Now, if you look at, in England, what they thought, kind of the philosophy at the time, Hobbes, in his Leviathan, thought man was a very evil creature in need of state control, that if you let man out, he would cause harm and destruction to his neighbor. In France, Rousseau, well, man wasn't quite that bad, more of a kind of a noble savage in need of a little instruction, a little, taming, as it were. In Germany, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, they thought that things should be equalized and that the government should own things and the government should control things. And they saw that economics was the mechanism of control that the government had to be in charge of. So when you are asked, why isn't America all the other countries in the world? It's kind of like when my mom would ask me, why are you not more like your brother? To which I learned not to say, because I'm not. Don't say that to your mother. It will not go over well. Trust me on this. But let's talk about how America is different by someone who is looking at America.
On the side of what's right. Because when it comes down to it, this is about keeping faith with the idea of America. Because America's an idea, isn't it? I mean, Ireland's a great country, but it's not an idea. Great Britain's a great country. It's not an idea. That's how we see you around the world, as one of the greatest ideas in human history, right up there with the Renaissance, right up there with crop rotation and the Beatles' White Album. The idea, the American idea, it's an idea. The idea is that you and me are created equal. It will ensure that an economic recession need not become an equality recession. The idea that life is not meant to be endured, but enjoyed. The idea that if we have dignity, if we have justice, then leave it to us, we'll do the rest. This country was the first to claw its way out of darkness and put that on paper. And God love you for it, because these aren't just American ideas anymore. There's no copyright on them. You brought them into the world. It's a wide world now. I know Americans say they have a bit of the world in them, and you do. The family tree has lots of branches. But the thing is, the world has a bit of America in it too. These truths, your truths, they're self-evident in us. Anyway, it's...
Okay. So you look at life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness. These are things that started out, the idea of America. It's an idea, and it was ratified in our Constitution. If you look at Europe, the French Revolution, 1789, they had a 10-day work week because they wanted to encourage the principles of enlightenment and decrease the authority of the Catholic Church. They didn't want to have the seventh day being a Sabbath. They did give us the metric system, and France's motto was liberty, equality, brotherhood, versus Germany's unity, justice, and freedom. America's motto is "In God We Trust." And again, you can kind of see business, religion. Even on our dollar, it says, "In God we trust." Keep that in mind. Backdrop, different cultures between Europe and the United States. Individual, common law versus civil law. Religion of the king determines the religion of everybody. Switching gears, looking at employer-based healthcare. The Industrial Revolution really changed things from an agrarian to an industrial base. Mining, steel, railroads, lumber, very dangerous jobs. Here's where you can see Adam Smith's invisible hand of self-interest for societal good. Companies would employ doctors and hosted industrial clinics, usually at their own expense, because healthy employees are more productive. If employees are on site and get treated on site, they don't go home. We don't lose productivity, we don't lose workers. And quite frankly, at the time, care options were pretty limited. Infections and surgery pretty much dominated healthcare then. In the late 1800s, early 1900s, labor unions started to form, and they were offering limited coverage to the members. Companies said, "Oh, we don't want to have a competitor. We'll start doing that too." And so they started setting up their own industrial accident coverage, meaning if you got hurt, you would get money to make up for the wages that you lost, that you could not earn because you were hurt. In the early 1900s, there were no antibiotics, and quite frankly, surgery had just stopped being done by barbers in the 17th century. The individuals would be offered industrial sickness funds, not really insurance. There was no actuarial science or sense to it. It was more trial and error. It's like, okay, if you give us this amount of money, we'll cover you for this amount. And it provided money to the individual, not to the doctor, because the care was delivered individually by the physician to the person, either in the clinic or at their home. And individuals had a choice. They could buy it, not buy it, choose or not choose to have it, depending on whether they thought they would get injured and needed the money to get by until they got better. Now, some of us are seasoned enough and will remember the old Montgomery Ward store, kind of like the Walmart of the time. It had a mail order catalog, and it was really the first modern group insurance issued by the London Guarantee Company, and it provided money to the individual that were, so that they could pay for things, the medical and surgical treatments done at home. And like I said, loss of wages were greater than the cost of healthcare. There were no payments to hospitals or doctors. Health insurance in this era was more like disability insurance. You get money if you get hurt. Now, guess what? Science advances. We have sulfa drugs. We have penicillin. Heck, death becomes optional for the first time. This is great. And then came the Depression. You didn't have a job, didn't have disability insurance. Hospitals didn't get paid. They would see people and not get paid. Well, hospital closed. There ain't no such thing as a free lunch. No money, no hospital. So what was the solution? The insurance companies, in particular, the Baylor Hospital System in Dallas, said, you know what? We will sell you insurance where you will pay for 21 days of future care. You may use it, you may use more than that, but if you buy it, we will provide you with 21 days. So the hospitals were trying to get some money because they were like, if we can get some money, we can stay in business and hopefully, not go out of business. So hospitals and doctors started getting paid in advance. Americans felt they needed it. Again, sulfa drugs were coming out. Disease was becoming optional. What was going on in Europe? Otto von Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor of the Second Reich, he unified Germany. He was called the Iron Chancellor because he brought the sword. And while Rome could never combat and quell the Germanic tribes, Otto von Bismarck did, and he unified Germany. His biggest competition were the socialists. Remember Marx and Engels? They wanted government control of economics and government ownership of everything. What he brought with him was he co-opted healthcare and said, okay, I'll either kill you with my sword if you follow me, or I'll give you healthcare. How about it? And so Germany was the first to have national healthcare in 1883. Now, some people want to know the difference between what socialism is. A quick way to remember it is private ownership, but government control. So you own it, but the government tells you how to use it. And this was temporary, the Second Reich, until Hitler's Third Reich and National Socialism took over. National Socialism is what got abbreviated to Nazism at the time. What about England? You know, they were initially common law from the Anglo-Saxons and Jutes. How did they change? What was going on there? They were exhausted and they were bankrupt after World War II. I mean, they stood against Germany alone after France fell in the Battle of Britain. And they stood there from 1939 till the US came in 1941. Long time against the Third Reich. So after World War II, they were tired of Churchill and the Conservative Party, and they elected Clemently Attlee in the Labour Party, and England became socialized. Private ownership, government control. The National Health Service came into being, the national industry, and the nationalized banking. Now, if you go back to the United States prior to Depression, those that were arguing for government healthcare said it would be very beneficial to society by redistributing costs amongst everyone. Be like other countries. Healthcare was a right, not a privilege. And quite frankly, it would be a net savings to businesses through a healthier society. You can imagine if you had a healthy population working that was already taken care of, that would be better for business. Well, there really was no public interest in the time in government-run healthcare. Politicians did not want to be like the Kaiser and socialist-run Germany. Businesses at the time thought it'd be too costly, and workers thought it would cost them jobs. They're spending money on insurance. They're not spending money hiring me or giving me a higher wage. Nope, don't want it. Besides, there's limited medical capability. Probably won't help. So insurance companies and doctors at the time didn't want to be involved with politicians who didn't know anything about their business. Not interested in it. Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations. One of the principles that, self-interest will lead to a moral background. That is the founding effect. Seeing itself, playing itself out there. So during the Depression era, Franklin Delano Roosevelt tried, but people were more interested in finding work. And people just preferred to pay for services when they needed. They didn't want to pay in advance. Okay, they didn't want to pay for something they weren't using. And money was pretty cheap. Money was very hard to find. 10% of the population were involved in some kind of insurance plan, usually prepaid, either through the company, union membership, not really a big deal. So the question comes up, how did health insurance, unlike any other kind of insurance, become linked to our employment? I mean, we don't get our car insurance through our job, our life insurance through our job. Why is health insurance part of our job? How did that happen? Executive Order 9250 by Franklin Delano Roosevelt as part of the 1942 Economic Stabilization Act. And it was the idea behind it and the intention behind it was very good. They wanted to fight, we're fighting World War II, 1941 to 45. And it's very expensive, all those Liberty ships, okay? And so we're putting them out by the thousands. We're supplying them to Britain, supplying them to Russia. I mean, we're building, Abrams tanks left and right, okay? All right, Sherman tanks left and right. So if we let wages go up, then the price of that tank, that Liberty ship will go up, and we can't fight the war. And we'll lose if we can't do that. So wages were frozen. You couldn't give somebody a higher wage. Well, the employers, the businesses, like, we need to recruit people, and there's very few able-bodied people out there. So if we can't increase the wages, I know, we'll give them benefits. And part of the executive order said, we will give you, you have to pay a payroll tax on the salary you give them. So if you pay them $1, you got to pay a tax on that. But if you give them 50 cents of healthcare, we don't tax you on that. So you can give them more healthcare benefits that wouldn't be subject to payroll tax. So this encouraged employers to take over that role and to determine coverage, and not the employee, because we can determine your benefits for you, and we will give you this package so you can work for us, even though I can't raise your wage. So this ushered in the third-party payer. This is how we got to our health insurance being controlled by or from our employer, unlike any other kind of insurance. Okay, companies could simply pay more without costing more. And then they added major dental plans and vision plans. And now the consequences, employer-linked healthcare, was a kind of a time bomb post-World War II, waiting for cultural and business changes to occur. Post-World War II, the GIs just wanted to come home, go back, to their hometown, go to work, raise a family, stay there, live there, stay there, and not go anywhere. Very geographically stable. Employers at the time promoted from within. There was a mailroom to boardroom mentality. You may start off at the lowest, level of the company and work your way up to be the chief executive of the company. That was very common and what was appropriate for that time. There was little competition post-World War II. England very much devastated, Germany devastated, Japan. Everyone was very much devastated as a result of World War II, but not the US. And so the third-party payer system spread like hotcakes throughout the United States. In fact, in 1979, as late as that, 97% of employees had the option of coverage from their employer. The New England Journal of Medicine said that this is the cornerstone of American healthcare, and this is wonderful, this is great, we love it. It's the way to do things. There are some consequences to a third-party payer system. Number one, it's no longer portable, but it's linked to your employment. So you lose your job, you lose your insurance. Well, if I'm not paying for it, I'm going to use it more because I'm not paying for it. So if you're using something more, what's going to happen to the price of it? If there's more demand for a limited supply, it's going to go up. And if you aren't paying for it, it's like going shopping with my teenage daughter. It's amazing how little she can buy with daddy's money and how much she can buy with her own. Somehow daddy's dollar doesn't go quite as far as her own dollar in picking the number of outfits she wants to wear and combine with this to match with that and go out with that and all that good stuff. All right. A lot of fun shopping with your daughter. Who gets left out if insurance is linked to your employment? It's the elderly and the unemployed, those in low-paying jobs. Because personal insurance is too expensive. You're not getting the tax deduction for an individual to buy that the company is getting. These are the people that are going to be most left out when your insurance is tied to your employer. Now let's look at how government got more and more involved in healthcare. In 1965, President Lyndon B. Johnson created Medicare and Medicaid. It's jointly run by both federal and state governments. Currently, roughly 41% of the population, or 136 million Americans, get their care from Medicare and Medicaid combined. If you look at 2019 numbers, you combine the cost, about $1 trillion per year, or 22% of the federal budget is spent on Medicare and Medicaid. Keep in mind, in 2019, the numbers was $4.45 trillion was overall, and $1 trillion of it, 22%, was just spent on Medicare and Medicaid. Medicaid is the #1 state cost representing anywhere from 14 to 38% of the annual state's budget. If you look at Indiana, 1 out of 5 tax dollars goes to Medicaid. If you look at Missouri, 38% or 2 out of every 5 tax dollars goes to Medicaid. In Illinois, almost 1 out of every 4 tax dollars goes to Medicaid. Here's the math solution. Here's just math. If you look at the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, the CMS website, they predict Medicaid is expected to reach 1.1 trillion by the year 2027. Medicare expected to reach $6 trillion by 2027. The total federal budget in 2019 was $4.45 trillion. It's math. There will be something will have to change, either by design or by default. Only 2 things are going to happen. Either you design, you make the hard choices, you figure out a better solution, or by default. 7.1 trillion is still greater than 4.5 trillion. Both are big numbers. One's bigger than the other by a whole heck of a lot. And that is a challenge that we're all going to have to face in a very short time. Looking at the different presidencies as we go forward, the started getting more expensive. So President Nixon passed the HMO Act, and it was the successor to the prepaid plans. Okay, I pay in advance, I get something if I need it. Required employers to sponsor them. Insurance companies increased their control. They had gatekeeper physicians, limited doctor networks, aggressive utilization review. Like, no, we don't think you should have done that. I know you're the doctor and that was the patient and you agreed on it, but we didn't think it was necessary, so we're not going to pay for it. It did slow healthcare inflation significantly. Patients didn't like it. They didn't like the denial of care, being told no, that what they'd come to agree with their physician that they wanted and thought was necessary. They didn't like it at all. So the insurance company said, fine, we'll be a little less restrictive. We'll have preferred provider organizations. How's that? Now let's look economically. Foreign competition, remember, devastated post-World War II, but now those cars come from overseas are not as chintzy. They're actually kind of nice, all right? A lot more competition. And so companies couldn't just roll in the extra costs with the automobile because the foreign companies weren't. And people were buying them because they were getting a lot better in quality. And so they stopped offering health insurance. So by the time the 90s came around, instead of at the start of the 80s, where we had 97% of employers offering it, you're down to 81%. Here's where, at the time, First Lady Hillary Rodham Clinton promoted her healthcare initiatives using regional purchasing cooperatives, mandatory enrollment, and it did not pass Congress. In 2006, President George Bush added Medicare Part D. He thought prescriptions are too much. We're going to give more money to decrease prescription prices. Well, as we all talked about basic economics, if there are more dollars going for a certain good, it's going to increase the price of it. So it may have cost $1 beforehand. You give them a 50-cent supplement. Why not raise the price to $1.50? Okay, that way it still costs $1, but now you're making $1.50. And that's what happens to all subsidies. It ends up going to whoever gets subsidized, not the person who actually gets that good. Basic economics. It now costs over $100 billion a year. In 2010, President Barack Obama passed the Affordable Care Act with gradual implementation dates, and he would have the younger, healthier participants subsidize the older and sicker. Must be approved or face a penalty. And this plan is defined by the government, enforced by the IRS, and we have exchanges that will mediate the actions. Overall, insurance companies didn't really participate in many places, especially rural areas. There was only one insurance company. Generally, fewer insurance companies participated over time. The success or failure of the Affordable Care Act is still undecided. In 2017, Congress failed to repeal the Affordable Care Act, but did repeal the individual penalty for not buying health insurance. The success or failure of the Affordable Care Act is still undecided. 2017 to 2020, President Trump, he said, okay, network adequacy, instead of the federal government going to do it, we'll just push that down to the states. What is defined as a good health plan with essential health benefits? We'll stop doing it at the federal level, let the states do it. Instead of patients going to Medicaid, let's have them go into Affordable Care Act plans. Instead of the government setting up health exchanges, let the private sector do that. Insurance, instead of us dictating exactly what health plan, what healthcare coverage had to be included, you have more freedom to pick that. And then healthcare pricing transparency. How much does this CT cost? How much does MRI cost? Requiring that to be advertised. The success or failure of the Affordable Care Act is still undecided. Here's the part where we switch gears. And Socrates, one of the wisest men ever born, said when asked what made him so smart, he said, the only thing I know is that I know nothing. I'm going to ask a lot of questions. I'm going to play back and forth to try and stimulate thought. Please do not send me hemlock afterwards. I do not want to end up like Socrates. It's very interesting. Healthcare. Why is healthcare the only industry in which the customer, patient, doesn't know the price for a given good or service, and the hospital doctor don't know how much they're going to be paid? Think about it. I buy stuff in a store. I have people come out to my house, fix my sink. I know nothing about plumbing, okay? But I get estimates. I always know before the job starts how much something is going to cost. And I can decide whether I wish or not wish. Why is healthcare the only one in which nobody knows what they're going to get paid and how much something costs? Who knows how much something is worth or how much they need to charge for something, the person producing it or the person buying it? What does the price of a product or service represent? When you see a price for something, what does that mean? What does it represent? How does it tell us what that means?
That face that is usually covered by her phone has finally made an appearance.
There we go. Let's find out about the price.
The basic principles underlying the free market, as Adam Smith taught them to his students in this university, are really very simple. Look at this lead pencil. There's not a single person in the world who could make this pencil. Remarkable statement? Not at all. The wood from which it's made, for all I know, comes from a tree that was cut down in the state of Washington. To cut down that tree, it took a saw. To make the saw, it took steel. To make the steel, it took iron ore. This black center, we call it lead, but it's really graphite, compressed graphite. I'm not sure where it comes from, but I think it comes from some mines in South America. This red top up here, the eraser, bit of rubber, probably comes from Malaya, where the rubber tree isn't even native. It was imported from South America by some businessmen with the help of the British government. This brass ferrule, I haven't the slightest idea where it came from, or the yellow paint, or the paint that made the black lines, or the glue that holds it together. Literally thousands of people cooperated to make this pencil. People who don't speak the same language, who practice different religions, who might hate one another if they ever met. When you go down to the store and buy this pencil, You are in effect trading a few minutes of your time for a few seconds of the time of all those thousands of people. What brought them together and induced them to cooperate to make this pencil? There was no commissar sending out orders from some central office. It was a magic of the price system, the impersonal operation of prices that brought them together and got them to cooperate to make this pencil so that you could have it for a trifling sum. That is why the operation of the free market is so essential, not only to promote productive efficiency, but even more, to foster harmony and peace among the peoples of the world.
That's very nice, Milton Friedman. But does everything have a price? Aren't some things, such as individual rights, priceless? And doesn't society have a responsibility to take care of the less fortunate individuals? And wouldn't society progress more rapidly if it invested in the security from want and satisfy the basic needs of its people? How can people be productive if they are not healthy? Looking at insurance, think about it. What would life be like without insurance? I mean, we insure everything. We even insure death. We call it life insurance, but it really is death insurance. And we insure our cars, we insure our homes. My goodness, we insure a lot of things, even from hurricanes coming in, flooding everything. The profit margin on insurance is actually quite low, anywhere from 0 to 5%. Very, very low, very, very tight margins. The reason they're so low is that they take in a lot of money. They invest it. That's where they make their money. It's actually an investment vehicle that happens to pay out when you crash your car, when lightning strikes your house. And so it's interesting that they have figured out how to insure everything from your home, your house, even your life, and still stay in business. When you look at health insurance, you have to understand that there's a difference between health maintenance, health insurance, and health care. Okay? If you think about your car, there is car maintenance. You've got to change the oils, rotate the tire, okay? Take it in for servicing. There is car insurance. Okay, if I get into an accident or if, my car breaks down, all right, fine. These things happen. And then there's car repair. Yep, I drove my car into the, ditch, it's snowing outside, and I drove in there and it doesn't need insurance. It actually needs car repair. Okay. So when it comes to health insurance, how can it be affordable if you expect health insurance to cover health maintenance? Okay. Your oil changes, your checkups, your regular repairs, your rotation of your tires. Okay. And how can it be affordable if it has to also provide health care? It's kind of like life insurance. Yeah, if you die, you need life insurance. But if you wait until you die to get it, nobody can sell life insurance to a dead person and still stay in business. Can't happen. Has to be done in advance. It's just the nature of insurance. Has to be done to ensure health, to ensure when things aren't healthy. That's just the nature of health insurance. So I ask you, if that's the nature of health insurance, why should people go bankrupt or decide between food and healthcare? Why should people with pre-existing conditions not be able to get health insurance? That kind of leaves them out, and that leaves out a large number of people who can't afford the price. And given the material wealth of America, wouldn't government provided universal healthcare be the best way to help the less fortunate? some baseline, some basic level of insurance so that we're all at least starting at the same level, same basic level? And isn't the health of the population a responsibility of government? I mean, our government runs water and sanitation, does food inspection. It would seem very natural for healthcare to cover that. And to think that laissez-faire, let do, is the best way of covering all people, especially those with pre-existing conditions, is doing nothing and just hoping that the free market and its impersonal price system can take care of everything magically. A lot of how you view the government's role in healthcare hinges on your view of your fellow man. John Locke thought man was a tabula rasa, a blank slate upon which society, people write the norms of behavior. Rousseau, man was a noble savage, needing taming, instruction from those that are better than he to curb his not so refined nature. Hobbes flat out thought man was evil, selfish, evil, and had to be controlled. And my God, you don't let that person out under your thumb or that person's going to cause trouble. That's what Hobbes thought. Or do you think man is generally altruistic, imperfect, but does have an innate sense of right or wrong and compassion? Because if man can't be entrusted to take care of his fellow man because he's evil, like Hobbes thinks, because he's a noble savage, just kind of a brute, or doesn't know any better, needs to be told what to do, according to John Locke. If man can't be entrusted to take care of his fellow man, but must be forced, taxed, controlled to do so, then does man deserve freedom? I mean, think about it. If you give him the freedom to choose, that means he can choose wrong, okay? He can choose poorly, okay? And if he's going to be like Hobbes, a selfish brute, an evil animal, then by God, I don't think that man deserves freedom at all. No, you don't set somebody loose on society like that. No way. And if a whole society is made up of people like that, I wouldn't let them out from under my thumb. No way. They don't deserve freedom. Now, a government solution says that they will provide for the less fortunate. And instead of the impartial price system, you have impartial technical expertise, a kind of bureaucratic altruism versus the profit motive. There will be better centralization and coordination of care with government-run healthcare. It'll be more population health management, less duplication of effort. Instead of having 3 hospitals systems with their own helicopters, with their own MRI, with their own CT scans, with their own everything, and not using them effectively or overusing them, cost because they have it, they got to use it. Having the right number of MRIs, the right number of CT scans, the right number of ambulances and helicopters, that would be much more efficient and decrease waste. Having one electronic medical record that once you get that MRI, that everyone can see it, that you don't have to repeat it because you happen to be in Florida and not Illinois on vacation and you bumped your head or had a heart attack or some chest pain, and they don't know your old EKG, they don't know your old scans. And so they're giving you unnecessary care because they don't know what your baseline is because they don't have access to it. And it would better coordinate and empower research, because then you could search, market, and lead to better evidence-based medicine and less waste on futile experimental care. Keep in mind, any government solution is liable to bureaucracy and Parkinson's laws. The first of Parkinson's laws is that an official wants to multiply subordinates, not rivals. The second, officials make work for each other. There will be increased taxation. There ain't no such thing as a free lunch. Central planning involves another layer of bureaucracy, and they have salaries, and they cost money to coordinate. There'll be, you may have private or government ownership, but the government will be in control. There will be rationing. Needs, wants, and desires are infinite. That is for sure. Your needs, your wants are infinite relative to your income. The European model there will be rationing. There will be more healthcare needs out there than there are the ability to cover them. And so you will have to manage demand. There will be queues and there will be care optimizations. These solutions are population-based, not individual-based. The young will pay for the old, kind of like Social Security, okay? It is redistributed. It's not an insurance, okay? The healthy paying for the unhealthy, the young paying for the old. What this takes, youth is, as is famously said, youth is wasted on the young. And 30 years after I graduated from college, yeah, I wish I had my 21-year-old body, but I certainly don't want my 21-year-old mind. If I could have my current brain and my 21-year-old body, that would be wonderful, but not going to happen. When you're young, you are at an economic disadvantage. You're just starting out. You don't have experience. You have potential, but your ability to earn money is limited by your experience and by how much, education you've been able to acquire and skills you've been able to acquire in that young, limited period of time. So the young are given mostly the blessings of health. They're at an economic disadvantage, but a health advantage. Guy like me, a little bit older, I am at a health disadvantage. Although I've acquired a number of skills over time and gained experience, I'm at an economic advantage compared to myself 30 years ago. When you have decreased individualization, you are hoping for better overall coverage. You have to manage the demand to fit the supply of the healthcare. There will be queues. There'll be utilization boards or healthcare optimizations. There'll be practice guidelines. There'll be assisted suicide, death with dignity, and everything will be determined by quality adjusted life year. There's no point spending $1 million on someone if they're only going to live one more day for that $1 million. Any therapy that you do under quality has to increase life expectancy or promote life wellness of anywhere from 10 to 15 years. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Done. There will be price controls, just like you got to control the cost. And there'll be legal changes. You can't sue the federal government if they're following federal guidelines. And then there's always that option of privacy concerns and risk of government coercion. If all your sensitive healthcare information is in one big database on one big electronic medical record, someone's going to have access to it. The bureaucrats will have access to it. If it was in a mean kind of sort, I could either follow the rules and you either get the care or you don't get the care. There are exceptions or there are not exceptions. Okay? It's not too hard to see how one could use healthcare as a way to control the population. Harken back to history. Otto von Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor. He was not, when he copied the socialist idea of healthcare, he was bringing the sword and he was bringing another way of control. History. Speaking of history, I've talked culturally difference between Europe and the United States and government-run healthcare. And, that's nice, that's in theory. Is there any example in the United States of government-run healthcare with a US population? And if there is, how long has it been in effect? And what is the success or failure of it? Well, yes, there are 2 examples in the United States of government-run healthcare. The Veterans Affairs have been around since 1930 in its current format. The Indian Health Service has been around since 1955. If there are any problems with access to care, quality of care, or health of those populations, has there been enough time for this system to be perfected? And is it the ideal that everyone would want, particularly the rich and famous? Because one thing about rich and famous people, they always seem, no matter what country they are in, they always seem to find where the best healthcare is. And they fly their private jets and they go to the Mayo Clinic, they go to Boston, all kinds of nice places where they're doing a lot of great stuff. Are they going to the VA? Are they going to the Indian Health Service? Just some practical thoughts. If there are any problems with these systems, government-run healthcare, would it get better? Indian Health Service, about 1 to 2 million. Veterans Affairs, about 20 million. If there are any problems with these healthcare systems on that level of 1 million and 20 million, will they get better or worse if you expand it to 330 million people? Milton Friedman, kind of an avuncular kind of guy, said this: one of the great mistakes is to judge policies and programs by their intentions rather than their results. And it's important when you come up with solutions and ideas. A lot of things have been done before. Look at the results, not the intentions. Look at the result. Because you'll find that people will have the same intention. They want to help those with pre-existing conditions. They want to help those that are poor, help those that don't have a job. They want to help the less fortunate. Man generally is altruistic. Imperfect, does some bad things from time to time, but generally is altruistic and want to help other people. Generally good. The intention is there. How one gets there, therein lies the rub. Insurance solutions, okay? Looking at free enterprise, things like healthcare savings accounts. Let people take money tax-free, grow it tax-free, and then spend it, tax-free. It can be sponsored by a company, union, or individual. Increase competition. Right now, states regulate insurance within the state. And so you can have one insurance company dominate a particular area or be the only option in a rural area. If you could open it up to competition and let in more, the price, just like we buy car insurance, we have several options to buy car insurance from many people. And we can either change it on a drop of a hat, pretty darn easy through a phone call. Hi, not interested. Hi, okay, I don't like your price. Hi, I don't like your price. Hi, I like your price. Boom. You solved your car insurance problem. Pretty darn easy, okay? So increasing competition. Thing called direct primary care. This is not concierge medicine where you pay a certain retaining fee and get to go this doctor that you think is top notch. What doctors are doing are saying, okay, you are low risk. I need to see 400, 500 people. I will charge anywhere from $40 to $100 per month, depending on, how much I need to work for them. And I will call them and talk to them by phone, by iPad, by text. I will see them in my house. I'll see them at home, and that's it. I can even do EKGs. I can even set up discounts for CT scans and MRIs. An MRI, if you get it through insurance, costs $5,000. You want to pay cash for it? It's $800. The cash price. Pharmacies, if you want to go through insurance, costs 2 or 3 times as much because of all the paperwork, regulation, and delay in getting paid. You can buy the same script for 10% of the cost oftentimes. Just depends on the medicine. And the pharmacy is more than happy to take cash and not deal with any headache. Oh, I'll charge you $100 through the insurance. If you give me $20, we're good, And so that is how direct primary care is working. And then you have to treat insurance as insurance. It can't be covering every oil change, every wellness visit. It may decide from a free market perspective, it's easier for me to do diet and exercise and encourage that. And it may provide discounts for that. Let them figure it out. But healthcare, it can't be healthcare. You cannot get life insurance after you die. even though you may need it, you can't get it. It can't be, insurance will not be affordable. You can't get life insurance. It will never be affordable if it is forced to cover somebody after they die. Just can't. And then as I talked about my lovely daughter and how going shopping with her is quite the adventure, depending on whose money one uses. And so this is very much common sense. Nobody spends somebody else's money as carefully as he spends his own. Okay. That is a true statement. And my daughter has taught me that. She's my daughter, so I tend to spoil her. I'm kind of a sucker. Dads are like that. Questions you have?
Thank you. That was. I've never seen a chat kind of light up throughout the hour as this one has. I think you've raised so many important points and questions, and maybe we can just start there, looking at the chat. I don't know if you can see that entire list.
Let's see. Okay, let me go. Chat. Yep,
it's a mix kind of comments, points, questions, opinions. So maybe we just start from the top, and then if people who have entered those questions feel like to improve the discussion, they can unmute themselves and add to it. Maybe we'll do that.
Okay, did you do that? I'm just reviewing the questions. Okay.
Let's see.
All right. So a lot of people will ask about political parties and difference, and the honest answer is I don't think either party has a clue. And I don't think either party has the solution. Okay. I think the people that know healthcare best, that means the physicians, the patients, that means the hospitals, that means everyone who works from inside the hospital, in the clinic, everyone who gets their care from a physician or hospital, they are the experts. Okay. So you are the experts. You will inform your politician of whatever flavor, okay? And they will come up with proposals and solutions, and you will vote on them. And then, as a society, we will live under, those rules until they change or get modified. So I think politicians generally aren't good or bad, or, I talk to my representative, let them know what I think. I don't assume that I'm always right. I don't assume that I know everything. No. I know better than that. My wife reminds me every day how many times I'm not right. But that is the solution, is to take what you know and what you see every day and inform your representative and let them say, hey, this works, this doesn't work. When it comes to costs, all right, knowing the price of, one thing that can be helpful is knowing how much something costs and the various ways in which one can buy it. When you're looking for a car or buying a diamond ring or, anything that you purchase that is significant, you shop around, you look. And so, one thing to take away from the talk is how can we make the price system work for us better? How do we know that, okay, I can get my surgery at place A for $10. I can get it at place B for $8, but I really like place A, so I'm going to pay the extra $2. We do this all the time when we buy our cars. Heck, a lot of people would love to buy a Cadillac with all the bells and whistles. Why not? But you know what? I really just need a little, Ford Taurus, Ford Probe. Okay. So again, you make your own choice on what you want to buy, where you want to buy it. We do it all the time. And so knowing the cost of good and service, like anything, would be one helpful thing for the healthcare system to have.
So is that even possible, right? Is it possible to know those costs to the consumer Or is the system set up a way that, a complete overhaul is necessary in order for that to happen?
Right now, they're not required because it's third-party payer, and it's like magic. You go in, doc doesn't know what they're going to get paid. You don't know what you're going to pay. You get this bill in the mail, like, oh my goodness. Then you call insurance. They say, no, oh, we didn't get this form. We didn't get that form. So then you go back and forth, back and forth. We do it all the time. There's got to be a better system than that. There's got to be a better one. So what that is, I don't know. But it's how we kind of ended up in this, how the third-party payer system works, how it's always going to work. That's the nature of a third-party payer. It's going to work that way. And so the question becomes, do you want a different third-party payer? Do you want it to be the government? Do you want it to be the insurance company? Do you want to be the third-party payer and take that responsibility on yourself? And then you have to come up with who's going to take care of the less fortunate. How are you going to handle that? Okay.
So there were some questions. I'm trying to summarize several of these too. One is about, are consumers really looking for choice of insurance plans or choice of providers? And I think that there was a comment both, right? Obviously, but is that possible, right?
Correct. So the question becomes, I really want person A, okay? I really want a Cadillac. I will pay extra for it. Maybe I won't have a vacation this year. I will do this. Another person may decide, I want to have a vacation. I don't want to buy that. So again, each individual have to decide for themselves whether or not they want person A, person B, and then the person actually providing the service can say, here's my practice, here's how I do things. You see it in pediatrician offices. They will say, if you believe in not immunizing your kids, I will not see you in my practice. And so those that don't want to immunize their children, there are pediatricians out there that support that and will, be glad to have you as their patient. And there are pediatricians out there that, nope, no vaccine, no visit. And that's perfectly fine. That's how, again, you, the individual, decide what's important to you. Okay. You can be right, you can be wrong, but it's for you. And you have to make your decision and live with the consequences of them. And that is a decision that has to be faced by everyone in the healthcare industry. Who do you want to be that decision maker? Because somebody else making the decision is like your parents. Thank God they love you. Thank God my parents put up with me. But I liked when it was time for me to leave. It was time for me to leave, make my own decision, make my own mistakes, and live with the consequences of those. And that's just part of life, growing up. So,
yeah.
Other questions that you can summarize for me?
Well, one that, our College of Medicine has a focus on healthcare technology and engineering. And I do, and many others wrestle with this point that historically technology drives up the cost of healthcare. But yet we see in other industries like communications and integrated circuits, right, that this popular dissemination of technologies will lower the costs for everyone. So is this a model that can be replicated in healthcare, or is it simply just absurd?
Actually, you bring up an excellent point. Look at electronic medical records. Technology, be it steam, be it the internal combustion engine, the wheel, okay, the computer, okay. A lot of these technologies have increased productivity, allowed wages to increase from increased productivity and efficiency. Generally, you're right. Technology improves productivity. A lot of times it will improve quality of things. Now, the electronic medical record has been around in its modern format since the mid-2000s, around 2005, 2006. It has had 14 years. And the only thing definite about electronic charting is, one, it has become a number one burnout for physicians, okay, and nurses. It has decreased productivity. People see fewer patients. The quality of notes are worse. than dictation and handwritten notes were before. Okay, so a technology that has been around for 14 years has still, it reliably decreases productivity, and we still use it. Interesting. I think that points to the reason why they used the electronic medical correctors. It was mandated. And so instead of these companies coming up with a solution that made your life better, they just had to wait for you to buy one of their solutions. They had to just compete with their competitors. They didn't have to compete with dictation. They didn't have to compete with paper charting. They just had to compete with, Cerner had to compete with Epic, who had to compete with, what's the other one? But anyways, they just had to compete with each other. They never had to compete head on with dictation and with handwritten notes. Had they competed head on, it would be like laser discs in the 1970s, which were better than VHS tapes in terms of quality. They were the precursor to the DVDs, as it were. They were the size of 33 records, basically the size of your laptop screen. And you needed 4 or 5 of them to get through a movie. No one wanted to keep changing out 4 or 5 discs to see a movie, even if the sound was better, even if the quality was beautiful like DVDs. They didn't want to do it. So VHS competed with Beta, competed with Laserdiscs, and the people chose, VHS until DVDs, and then they chose DVDs until they chose streaming at Netflix. So that's how technology can make things better and progress. But the one who drives it is the consumer, is the person who's going to be using it, the person who knows what they want, knows what they need, and the business that figures out, just like Steve Jobs, tell me what you want, what you really, really want. Okay? I will give you a phone with a camera. I'll give you a phone this size or that size. I'll give you a tablet. I'll even include the music in there. I'll give you some apps too. Hey, you want to go stargazing? Here's an app for that. Okay? So
yes, yeah, very good.
Those 2 people are going to figure it out. The person using it and the person providing it. Those are the ones that need to dictate to what they want and how they want it. And it's going to change over time, just as, and I use the example of, VHS tapes to DVDs to streaming. Streaming won't be with us forever either. We'll have the next, there'll be something else that comes up. And hopefully the quality of the movies go up. So, but that's just my personal opinion.
Oh, thank you. Well, that was technology. There's some general comments just about accessibility. And Dean Jokela says, to promote a healthier, more just society, ideally we want a healthcare system where everyone has coverage for and access to the care that they need at a cost that they can afford. So your thoughts on this accessibility issue?
That is philosophical. It's the how to do it. So if you talk to people, I don't care what their political persuasion is or their religious beliefs or whatnot, generally people want to help those that are less fortunate, those that are, through no fault of their own. Hey, it happens. Okay. And that's life. Life is a full contact sport. Okay. And tomorrow is promised to no one. So knowing that, and that affects all of us, how do you take care of those that are less fortunate? How do they take care of themselves? Okay. That is the conundrum. We talk about in addiction, you can't pay for poor choices. You don't give alcohol to an alcoholic. You don't want to pay someone not to do well. Okay. So they get more for doing less. You don't want to set up dependency because eventually you get more and more of it and it doesn't work out well. So there is also a big challenge of defining what is a basic level of care. Think about it. If you assume that you want to provide it, then you have to define it. Okay. So I will ask you a simpler question. Define for me what a basic level of food is. Is it ramen noodles, tuna, peanut butter, and pasta? Okay. That's what I ate for many years. Okay. All right. It is a basic level of food. Okay. Thank God my wife is a very good cook and I have, I still like peanut butter and jelly, but my diet is definitely better than it was when I was younger. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when you define a basic level, be it food, clothes, housing, come up with that definition, which is impossible. It's determined by the individual and the circumstances that they're in and their desires. And so I always like to point out what St. Augustine famously said, as a philosophy: in necessary things, unity. In what is not necessary, liberty. Hey, someone has a different favorite color? Fine. I don't care, but in all things, charity. Take care of each other, take care of yourself, take care of your family, take care of your neighbor. Okay. Because you're no good to your family if you don't take care of yourself. You're no good to somebody else if you don't take care of your family. So take care of what you know best, what is closest to you in these circles of responsibility, and you will change the world by doing what you know best in the world that you are most familiar with, which is right around you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of, hopefully that helps. And again, when you advocate for a basic level, the biggest challenge is you have to define what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And invariably it comes down to each individual is different.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just the end result of if you trying to find something.
Mm-hmm. Good, thanks.
Yeah.
There's a question from Richard Kaplan, who I think makes a really interesting point that a lot of these ideas basically rely on starting from scratch, right, for these implementations of these plans. But that's really not the case, right? It's where do we go from here to get there? And this path dependency is a major barrier to serious innovation. So, do we have to be thinking about that, right? It's more of a change, not a new plan.
Correct. And just like common law evolved over time, certainly you started out with two basic premises. You can't kill somebody, you can't take their stuff, you can't take their intellectual property. So from common law, we have developed, a whole series of rules that generally work fairly well, in society. Thank goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Preserving individual freedom, but also having order, kind of that balance. There is a balance between the individual and society. Similarly, whatever we do with healthcare has to be a reiterative process. There is not going to be a master plan. No one is smart enough or has all the ability to have the master plan. Okay, at least not on this earth. So the smartest thing to do is to have a system like common law where you have precedent judges, where you work out cases as if they are the same or they're different. Is there a nuance, as new things come up, as new issues or same issues but a different light? Fine, you address those, but with an eye on the past so that you know what you can do in the present so you can affect the future. So you know what your goals are. You want people that have the ability to be a physician, to run a hospital, and do so in a way that cares for people when they are in need. And people want to have that option, like going to the baseball game that if I need to want to go to the baseball game, I have that option. If I want to go to the hospital, I have that option. Okay. And then I have to make, being an adult, I have to make that decision, my responsibility. And for my children, until they become responsible for themselves, I'll take care of them for them. I'll take care of them. So I think the process needs to be in place that is the most flexible, because when in doubt, liberty. Okay, when you don't know, when you're unsure, let people decide, let people experiment. Look at this direct primary care model. It's very affordable. If you're relatively healthy, you can $20 a month. Okay, I can do that. And I can text my doc. I can, email, person comes in, I get my EKG, they read it, and I get charged $5 for the leads. Okay, this is good. And instead of being doled out medicine in 3-month increments, because that's all the insurance will cover at one time, I know you know me, you're going to be on this blood pressure medicine for the whole year. I can get a bottle, 1,000 of them, for pennies in bulk, because I pay cash, and I'll give it to you for the whole year. Voila, solved. And those kinds of solutions where people work it out, just like I do with my plumber. He comes in and he tells me how he's going to fix my sink. And if I like what he says, great. If I don't, I go find another plumber. I get, the rule of 3. I get 3 estimates, and between 3 estimates, I figure it out. Okay.
Yes.
And you have to treat insurance as insurance. Mathematically, if it's like life insurance, if you can buy life insurance after you die, okay, there's not going to be any life insurance. So there's no, it just mathematically it's impossible. And the other emphasis point is that we have to make a decision with respect to Medicare and Medicaid. By the own website, they will literally almost double the budget. So by default or by design, we have to come up with a solution, because you can't just print in dollars, and you can't just you just don't have it. It just doesn't exist mathematically. And
You're
so that is the impetus. And the sooner you do it, as we all know in our own personal lives, the sooner you make the tough decisions, or at least, move in that general direction. You get a huge credit card debt. The sooner you start paying that thing off, okay, the better off you are. And if you wait till you get to the end where you have no ability to pay it off, then bad things happen, and then you're into default and emergency and reaction, and that is
more costly.
That's more costly than making the tough decisions early on. So that's where we're at in terms of, what would I do politically? Talk to my peeps. I don't care what political stripe your representative is. They represent you. You have the power. You're the one that votes for them, okay? Or doesn't vote for them, okay? You have the power. So you let them know what you think and what you are solutions. And math is math. They can say whatever they want. It's too expensive. We are going to, by default or design, come up with a different system for Medicare and a different system for Medicaid. It will be.
Yeah, and I think another timely question that was brought up was, has this pandemic taught us something about just accessibility, delivery of care, and our programs and systems that are in place? And do you expect any of that to change once this pandemic passes?
The one thing, what did Sir Winston Churchill famously say? You can always count on the Americans to do the right thing after exhausting all the other alternatives. Okay? So I think America will make mistakes. We will figure it out, and we will come to a better solution, because we have the freedom, we have the people, we have the know-how, we have the capital, and we have people that just want to make it better, that have the innate desire to make tomorrow better. And as in my military travels, this one Brit said to me, "Do you know the problem with you Yanks?" I go ahead, tell me. "You Yanks think that tomorrow will be better." And it was a very interesting comment that he said. And I've heard it many times in all my travels, that you Americans are optimistic. You Americans think that tomorrow will be better. That is something in your DNA, something in your culture, that you think that you can change things for the better. And I looked at this Brit and I said to him, yeah, tomorrow may not be 24 hours, but it will be better. It may take a few years. There may be some periods of time, which we all have had in our lives, which are kind of rough, but you get through them, and tomorrow will be better. You learn from the rough times, you learn from your mistakes. And so similarly, I think America will figure it out. Just allow people to In doubtful things, liberty. Let them figure it out. Let them try. Let them make mistakes, and they will learn from them. And after exhausting all the alternatives, they will do the right thing, or at least come close to it. But it'll take a while. It'll take a while, but I'm hopeful. I always am.
Very good. Well, I also see, I want to give other people an opportunity to vocalize some of their thoughts. I know Dr. Jokla, if she's still on, I think you had a number of points that you wanted to bring up, and if you feel free to mention those.
Oh, sure. Thank you so much, Steve. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And thank you so much for your talk today. Enjoyed it. It's a tough topic. It's complicated. At any rate, I think the question, it's so easy to get into the weeds on this, you know, in terms of paying for this, paying for that, and insurance and everything else. But I think it really speaks to the necessity of stepping back and thinking, you know, and pausing for a minute, like, what are our values as a society, you know, and perhaps the, you know, the proof of that is, how do we care for the people who don't have a job, who don't speak English, or who, you know, right now in the current system don't have health insurance, and how do we respond to that? So, you know, it's not so much a question perhaps for you, but just more maybe a challenge for all of us to be thinking about these problems on that level. And then the weeds will, you know, we'll take care of the weeds at some point. But I think those are critically important questions to ask ourselves as a society. How do we take care of each other as well? But anyway, there are some other articles and things in the chat. And again, I'll thank you for your comments.
No, great point. And what really gives me hope is when I see my colleagues donate their time, talent, and treasure to volunteer clinics. When I see churches, synagogues, mosques, you know, help out those not only economically, but health-wise. It is amazing. Americans volunteer and give away so much of their time and treasure. Truly, it is amazing. And you can look at the world and see what's wrong with it, and you will have no shortage of finding what's wrong in the world, guaranteed. But if you also look to what's right in the world, right in front of you, where you have physicians volunteering, where you have people donating their time and treasure, and churches, you know, getting people that, again, bad things happen, and they mobilize, and they have these GoFundMe stuff. I mean, it's truly amazing. And I think looking at those things and promoting those things, you know, increase the amount of good will eventually lead to a decrease in the bad. And that, you know, is much more hopeful. And that's what I look at. You know, I look at all the wonderful things people are doing and applaud them. And I would encourage them, recognize them, even though a lot of times they don't want it. They're just doing it because they just do, which is kind of cool. Other questions and comments?
I had a couple. Thank you for that presentation. It's actually a topic I've worked on for a long time. I worked in health policy and research, and then I worked with a single payer advocacy group, Physicians for National Health Program, for about 10 years, and I was on their board. And I really appreciate you giving that presentation. I think it highlighted one of the biggest misconceptions in health policy, and especially international health policy. And that's this idea that you kept trying to separate America as somehow being so much different than all European countries, that we somehow have an entirely privately financed system, and that other countries are socialized or have entirely socialized healthcare systems. And it's a false dichotomy that's really important to point out. The first part of that is that private health insurance exists in essentially all other countries. I did research myself in Sweden on executive care, also known as Stockholm care. There exists a constitutional amendment in Canada that individuals must be allowed to buy private insurance. So private insurance exists in every other first world country. And this idea that it was somehow created by Marxists and socialists is actually not true. And it just plays a much smaller role in their healthcare systems because it provides essentially very expensive care to a very small number of people. And the other side of that false dichotomy that's so important to look at is that in America, we have a largely publicly financed system. More tax finance dollars go into our healthcare system than any other nation in the entire world. So if you just look at public spending and public insurance, America has the most public spending on a healthcare system. We just don't provide basic need for a large portion of our population. So that's really important. And then the way we structure our system, this 80-20 rule, because you kept saying it was all about the numbers, and in that entire presentation, you provided very few numbers, except to say that our Medicare and our Medicaid system are extremely expensive. You didn't actually break those numbers down. And the reason they're so expensive, as a physician who takes care of high-risk patients who don't get their insurance from their employer like everyone else on this call, Walmart, the nation's largest employer, because you kept referencing that, actually avoids giving insurance to most of their employees by switching them to less than 32 hours a week. And when you're fortunate enough to get your insurance through your employer in the United States of America, you'll likely get a $5,000 or $10,000 deductible plan. So our healthcare system is inept. It's mostly publicly financed, and the way in which we finance it publicly is unjust and doesn't make sense by numbers. So we pay for, through our public system, pregnant women, disabled people, the elderly, and the infirm or other reasons. And then it's really just a game of trying to ensure healthy employed people for private insurers, the 80-20 tool. 20% of people account for 80% of health spending. We largely pay for them through government finance dollars. I appreciate that, but again, I think maybe in the future, try to present more numbers and data to back some of your statements.
Yeah, thank you very much. And you bring up excellent points regarding the system. There is a cultural dichotomy between Europe and the US. That is true. How healthcare is done is very much a hodgepodge mix in the United States, and it definitely needs work and improvement. So yeah, definitely applaud you for looking into another way of trying to maximize all the money that gets spent and being better adept, because it is a lot of money. And if it's not returning on investment what you need it to do, well then, like anybody who's spending too much and getting too little, it would be wise to look at what you're spending it on, how you're spending it on, and then reallocate. Very smart. Just like any household, if you're spending too much on your car and not enough on your house or food, or too much on vacations and not enough on heating and whatnot, then yeah, absolutely. And I think healthcare overall in the United States definitely needs to look at how it funds things and how it spends its money. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? This has been really, really good and informative. Well, Dr. Bruzzini, I just can't thank you enough. I think that you brought up so many important points. We have never had a chat and a discussion go this long, and I think it's just something that is so central and in everyone's hearts and minds right now, and it's in need of solutions. And I think as a college, we're also all about innovative thinking and trying to apply that for solutions to these very problems. So thanks for providing that insight. And thanks to the audience for joining us, for sticking with us to the end here, and for all your questions and thoughts. So wish everyone well. Take care.
Thank you all very much. And God bless and good luck. And you will come up with the solution. All of us together, we'll figure it out. And that's what I'm looking forward to. Take care, everybody.